Thank you, and special thanks to all of you for staying around for the last talk today. I tried to make this crisp and hope you get something out of it for you to take home. I think it's actually quite an important topic as well, because the title of the talk is Bringing Quantum Tech from the Lab into the World. And I think if you think back over these 2 days, all the technologies, everything you've seen, if you imagine three years back, 5 years back, those things were somewhere hidden in a research lab from the rest of the world. So we really have to support people to bring out those wonderful technologies such that we can use it as a society. We have tried to address that, or we're trying to address that with an incubation program specifically for quantum tech startups in Munich. And I want to share a couple of the learnings we made over these 2 years with you today. I want to do 3 things. First, we're based in Munich, so you have to understand a bit about the Munich ecosystem. So I want to give you an introduction there, kind of what are the ingredients that we already have. Then I want to spend a couple of minutes on kind of what we actually do, how we work. And then I want to give you 2 examples, 2 teams that we worked with and what we learned along the way, helping them on their journey, kind of bringing the technology out of the lab. So, first, Munich. Yeah, it's not just a very pretty city, I think, in the heart of Europe, close to the Alps. But I truly believe it's a unique playground for quantum tech startups. And the title of the talk is Bring Stuff Out of the Lab, so we have to start with the lab, with the research landscape. We have 2 of the leading European universities with TUM and LMU in Munich. We have several Max Planck institutes, most notably the Max Planck Institute for Quantum Optics. We have the Bavarian Academy of Sciences with the Walter Meissen Institute for Superconducting Technologies, the Leibniz Supercomputing Center providing the local HPC, and then obviously also a couple of Fraunhofer institutes as our RTO to advance the technology readiness level. So I think that alone is quite good and helpful, but the uniqueness, I think, is in the history of collaboration we have between these institutions. And for quantum, there's 2 things that are really relevant. One is the MCQST, the Munich Center for Quantum Science and Technology, which involves a lot of researchers from these institutions, more focused on basic research, on education, on all of these topics. And then since October 2021, we also have the Munich Quantum Valley. Now that involves really all of the institutions here and is much more focused on driving quantum tech towards application. So what they did is actually look around in Munich, who has a certain skill set that is relevant to bringing quantum computers to life, clustering those people around their competencies, around the stack of a quantum computer. So there's a team for providing the qubits. There's a team for actually scaling production up to an industry grade. There's teams that do HPC integration, but then also other teams who are the experts on application algorithms for quantum computers. So really making use of all the research power we have. And then alongside of that, there's a couple of overarching topics like education, infrastructure, and entrepreneurship, which I'm part of, to also help bringing those things out. I think the second, and by the way, this is also heavily supported by the government. I think together with the state government and the federal government, there's about north of 450 million in funding for this program alone. Yeah. So the second ingredient, we just had a talk on talent, on education. I think we have a really good base in Munich. These 3 universities have 120,000 students. And also LMU and TUM have a really good quantum science and technology master's program. I think the last intake in October had somewhere between 80 and 100 students starting. So we hope to, like every year, get those numbers out of those programs to help the quantum ecosystem as well. The next thing which I think is very unique to Munich is our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And most notably, we have here Unternehmertum. For those of you who don't know it, that's our business creation center. And it's the largest we have in Europe. It actually has, I think, more than 350 employees for a business creation center. That's quite impressive, I think. And they've started 20 years ago. So they accumulated a lot of knowledge, expertise, connections that are relevant to supporting startups. And also we have now generations of actually successfully scaled startups in Munich, like Celonis, for example, which is now a so-called decacorn valued at more than 10 billion euros. So very valuable companies, and also those guys provide us with people who have done the scaling of companies. So you have, like, similar to the Silicon Valley in a way, people that come back and support the next generation of startups. What goes alongside with that is a pretty good landscape of investors that also have done quantum deals, that know their way around it, they know how the business works and what it takes to actually bring out quantum technologies. So I think that's another really important criteria or ingredient for the ecosystem. And then the last one being actually our industry landscape. You have a lot of big companies in Munich, a lot of DAX companies that also look into quantum are based in Munich. A lot of the big tech companies from the US have significant development plans there. But you also have more specialized players like Rode and Schwarz, Toptica that go towards the provider of equipment for quantum tech. So all in all, I think we have all the ingredients. Now the question is a bit what's missing there. And the problem is these two, especially the researchers and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, are quite separated. And so that's where we come in with our program, which is called the Venture Lab Quantum. We really try to build a bridge between the researchers and that entrepreneurial ecosystem, and kind of secondly, try to involve all the stakeholders here to make it work in a way. So just a few seconds on how we work, what we do. I think we have 3 steps basically in the program. The first one being outreach, making sure that we are proactively in contact with the researchers, with the talent, so that if they have questions, if they think about starting something, they know who to talk to, so we remove the hurdles they have to actually get started. The second thing is educational programs to give students, PhD candidates, postdocs the right tools to think about ideation, to think about starting a company, always at the intersection of quantum tech and entrepreneurship. And then the heart of our program is basically in what we call venturing. Yeah, everything that happens in between the first idea and then really the incorporation, the first funding rounds, where we provide all kinds of support. I have to say the only thing we don't do is direct investments, but we support the teams with application for startup grants, with IP topics, with coaching, with incubation programs. So we really try to set them up for the right way from the beginning. Quite important for that, obviously, is the ecosystem, having the right partners, having the startups that are a few steps further in their journey, helping the next ones. Obviously, at some point also providing them stages at events, so present themselves to the world. And then one thing that is quite unique, I think, for our program as well, is the infrastructure piece, because we talk about deep tech technologies. So we try to provide office spaces, of course, just for them to work, but also things like prototyping labs, where they can take actually the technology and build their prototypes in their own labs, provided by us for free. And then I think for quantum tech specifically, very, very important is access to institutional infrastructure, because no startup is going to build their own clean room. There's a lot of expensive machinery involved. So for us, what we try to do is open the doors for our teams such that they can access that infrastructure. Now, the kind of teams we work with are not only specifically in quantum, so that's kind of our tech landscape that we work in. It is obviously what I would say, quantum 2.0, everything that goes into a quantum computer, full stack, might be only a screw, might be only a piece of software, sensing as well, but then you also have other things, like I call this the deep physics field, where you have photonic computing, for example, neuromorphic computing, new 2D materials, light sources, whatever it might be. That is not really quantum, but also very interesting, very related technologies that oftentimes come in helpful for quantum tech. And then we also have another vertical more on the classic semiconductor industry for new architectures, for example, driven by RISC-V, open source architectures there, or everything that goes into building chips, designing chips, where we try also to support. Now, the 2 startups I brought as a case study are one full-stack quantum computing company, and then another one which is in the field of quantum sensing. And let me introduce them briefly. So the first team, with both of them, we have worked over the last 2 years. The first one is Quantum Diamonds. So they try to bring NV-based, NV-center-based quantum sensing into industry applications. And then we have the other team called Planck, which is a spin-off of the MPQ, building basically neutral atom-based quantum computers. And I just want to share now a bit of their journey and a couple of learnings that we made along their journey. So with Quantum Diamonds, that's a spin-out from TUM, here by Professor Dominic Bucher's group. And I think about 2 years ago, we had the first discussion with him because he works on quantum NMR a lot, and so we had a discussion about the spin-off potential there. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a longer-term goal, let's say, and then a couple of weeks after the first discussion, one of his PhD students, Robin here, came back to us and he was like, hey, Chris, I thought about something else. I thought about, could we not only sell the diamond chip with the NV centers in it? And so we had a discussion for a couple of minutes, thinking about scaling this, and, you know, also kind of demand they already have created with the specs they can provide. And I guess he left quite encouraged, so he applied for things like the TUM Idea Award, which is awarding people with nice application ideas of their research, which you see they straight away won. They joined the early stage incubation program by Unternehmertum. And, you know, the learning I took from this is really you have to provide a bit of activation energy for the guys. Oftentimes, it just takes a little encouragement to bring them over the step to actually start the process. So this discussion and being around them is extremely important. So continuing in the journey, from that idea, how did the team evolve? How did it continue? So they took part in this early stage incubation program, which also introduces them to a lot of people with different backgrounds. Yeah? So there's individual talents coming in. Now, that helped to see kind of the value they can provide. Sometimes physicists, for example, don't really like to work with business people too much in the beginning. And in the end, it led to Kevin here on the right-hand side, who's now the CEO of the company, joining the team. Now, Kevin has a business background, is a former McKinsey guy, was actually part of our team, but was a coach on the program, and he decided, hey, this is too interesting to not join them. And so he took over, or not took over, but he joined the team. And simultaneously, Robin, I showed you before, decided he wants to pursue his PhD. But then the other two guys, Fleming here, who is as a physicist, and Christina as a chemist, actually, both from the Bucher lab, decided also after their PhDs they want to join their group, their team. And it's been actually tremendous to see them working together. Yeah, very different backgrounds. And for me, that's just showing again, I mean, we always say that, but they really showcase it. It's so important to have multidisciplinary teams. Yeah, people with different backgrounds working together to actually make, you know, like tell a good story, make sure that all the things that you need for a business are somewhat covered. Now, further on in the journey, selling only the chip is somewhat tricky. I mean, you have demand in academia, you have certain industry companies that are interested, but if you don't further integrate the product, you are at the mercy, basically, of the applicant of this thing. So they were like, okay, there's certain industry verticals we can target, and the question was like, where do we actually focus on? So they also, by the way, wrote this white paper with the different application areas. If you're interested, you can get that on their webpage. And they had to look in into all these industries and understand kind of, okay, where is the best way to start? And so what we did is giving them introductions to a lot of industry companies where we have good contacts. And through those contacts, I think they got a lot of introductions to the right people at these companies who can assess the potential of their technology. In the end, they said, okay, let's focus on the semiconductor industry. There's a very interesting use case in analyzing chips basically for quality control, with those diamonds to kind of see if there's defects in there, if there's leakage currents. And so the learning we took out of this is there's extreme value in kind of warm introductions, because we, as a neutral person in between, serve a bit as a quality gate for a lot of the industry companies to say, like, this is a serious team, they do good work, you should take this call, for example. Yeah. So another one of the important learnings we took out of this. Well, then let's switch from quantum diamonds to the next team, which is Planck. Now, they're spin out of the Max Planck Institute for Quantum Optics. Yeah. Very much known in the world of neutral atoms, received the Nobel Prize in 2005, Theodor Hensch, for freezing the atoms for the frequency cold lasers. So they have a really, really strong background in neutral atom-based systems. And also 2 years ago, the guys, some of the group leaders from the Max Planck Institute came to us and said like, hey, we're thinking about spinning something out. Now, there was some funding call on the horizon for a company. And so they weren't sure when it's going to start. So they had this problem that they weren't clear if it's coming, but they anticipated it to be in something like 6 weeks. So within 6 weeks, they had to kind of set up the entity. And you know, it takes a lot of things to kind of set up a legal entity. You need a notary, you need a lawyer, you need tax consultants and all that. And so they were like, yeah, of course we know a few people, but who knows if it's the right ones. So we went back to Unternehmertum, checked, do we have experiences, who are the good people we have to talk to, provided them with all the contacts, and so they could start working. And I think that for me was interesting to see because it needs a really broad network. Yeah? Later in their journey, we also connected them with architects, real estate agents. So, you know, you can provide so much value through centralizing all these connections such that the teams don't need to figure out who's the right person I can talk to. So kind of the breadth of the network is also important. Now, the last learning was then kind of further on in the journey. The funding grant actually didn't show up, so there was a more relaxed timeline, but waiting for public funding grants is also not the best idea always. So they decided, okay, let's get a private seed funding round in first. And obviously, there's a few things you have to do. You have to build a pitch deck. And these guys are brilliant researchers. They also have a good business acumen. But still, we said, okay, let's see, let's build a pitch deck and we'll see, we have a look, let's talk about it. And we brought a few people together. So like, okay, let's look at this. And I think just from our side, bringing this outside perspective, bringing a little bit of the thinking how a VC, for example, would look at that, was extremely valuable for them because, I mean, it was in great shape already, to be honest, but little bits and pieces are always important to then really convince an investor that this is the right team. And so we gave them the feedback. We also basically introduced them to a couple of investors we know, give them feedback to the investor as well, what we think about the team quite honestly, without sharing any confidential information, of course. And that led to them raising actually a quite significant round for their seed. And I think there the learning was really provide an outside perspective because there's always, and I think there's quite a bit of value in having a background in this field, knowing kind of how it works, and then being able to still kind of give a bit of this outside perspective. Like, for example, like a VC with a focus on quantum tech would look at a pitch deck. All right, so as a summary, these are the 5 points. There's countless things we do, I think, always little bits and pieces that we do to support startups. It's always hard to assess kind of what's the thing that really, really helps. But these 5 points are what I thought were really important, which I immediately realized that they really help the teams. Now, maybe most interestingly, where do they stand? Quantum Diamonds today is an incorporated company. They received financial support from many institutions, actually. I'm quite sure we'll see something more in the next 12 months. Planck, on the other hand, got their seed round in beyond 5 million, and then actually quite new information from last week. They finally received their contract by DLR for 29 million to build a neutral atom-based quantum computer. All right, that's pretty much it from my side. So thanks for staying. But I want to finish also with a little call to action. So if you are in any role, corporate, startup, educator, help us really to build a strong ecosystem in Europe. Yeah? If you're a corporate, open your doors, be open to working with startups. If you are maybe a startup that's a little further in the journey or scale up, help the next generation. Yeah? And if you are working in research, for example, support your teams in thinking about applications, thinking about spin-offs, and try to help us build a strong ecosystem in Europe.